Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take complex source material articles, research papers, you name it, and really boil it down to the essential knowledge you need.
And today we're diving into something pretty unique. We're looking at this amazing intersection of, well, ancient human practices and the very latest in neuroscience.
Yeah, we're talking about accessing different states of consciousness, specifically trance states. But, and this is the key part, not through the usual routes like substances, LSD, ayahuasca, things like that.
Right. Or even necessarily through traditional group rituals with drums. This is about something called self-induced trance, or SIT. And the research suggests it's a capability potentially inherent in every single one of us.
So our mission today is to unpack the really incredible personal story that kicked all this off, look at the hard science, the EEG proof, and then explore where this could actually lead.
Exactly. The potential applications seem huge, touching on everything from health and cancer research to psychiatry and even how we learn.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. This story really centers around Corine Sombrun. Back in 2001, she was a BBC producer in Paris, a composer, an author.
And she was going through a really tough time dealing with the loss of her partner. She decided she needed some distance, some space, and ended up traveling way out to northern Mongolia, right up near the Siberian border.
And it was there, seeking distance, that she stumbled into something completely unexpected. She met a traditional shaman.
She did. And apparently the moment this shaman started beating his drum, something happened to her. Something involuntary.
Can you describe that? Because the sources paint it as less sort of mystical revelation and more physically overwhelming, almost frightening.
Absolutely. She started shaking uncontrollably. And then she reported the sensation of physically changing, transforming into a wolf.
Into a wolf? You mean like metaphorically?
No, according to her account, it felt utterly real. Howling, feeling her hands become paws, her face changing into a muzzle, all while she was completely aware, just unable to stop it.
Yeah.
A spectator in her own body.
I just can't fathom that. A modern Parisian producer suddenly feeling like she's literally becoming an animal because of a drum beat. The shock must have been immense.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
And when it finally stopped, the shaman's reaction was immediate. He basically said, "You're a shaman. The spirits chose you. You need to stay."
And did she? He wanted it for 3 years, right?
He did. She resisted at first, naturally. But eventually she felt compelled to go back. Not for 3 straight years, but she ended up spending parts of the next 8 years apprenticing with him, learning the traditional Mongolian ways.
And through that training, she began to understand the trance state wasn't just weird. It had tangible effects, didn't it?
Very tangible. Beyond the obvious things like losing track of time or feeling like something other, there were real physical changes. Increased strength, for one.
Yeah. The drum itself, that wasn't light.
Not at all. We're talking 7, maybe 8 kilos, 15, 17 pounds. And she found she could drum for hours in that state without the usual fatigue or pain setting in.
And there was more cognitively speaking.
Right. Sharpened senses and this claimed ability to access information, what the shamans call the spirit world stuff, that just wasn't available in her normal state of consciousness.
So this powerful mix of the physical and the cognitive, that's what eventually led her to think, okay, I need to figure out what's actually going on here scientifically.
Exactly. She wanted proof.
Yeah.
She wanted to see what her brain was doing during these experiences. She wanted an EEG recording.
Which isn't easy to arrange for something like shamanic trance.
No. But she eventually connected with a psychiatrist in Canada, Pierre Henry, who was open-minded enough to try. But he had one very specific, very practical condition.
The drum. He said absolutely no drum in the lab.
Yeah, apparently he was worried that this big, heavy, loud, traditional drum would literally vibrate his expensive EEG equipment to pieces.
Which sounds almost funny, but it forced a critical moment, didn't it? She had no idea how to get into the trance without the drum.
None. The drum was the only way she, or the Mongolian tradition she learned, knew. She tried just remembering the music, the rhythm, nothing.
So it worked.
She had this insight. She thought back to that very first, terrifying, involuntary trance. What was the absolute first physical thing she felt?
The shaking.
The shaking. So she consciously initiated that physical shaking herself. And boom, the trance state kicked in instantly.
Wow. So the drum wasn't the mechanism itself, just a trigger.
Precisely. It suggested the drum might be a kind of universal key, but the actual lock, the mechanism for trance, is inside us. And maybe, just maybe, everyone has their own key, a specific thought, movement, sound, something that can unlock it. Self-induction.
And this led to the study published about 10 years later, which was a big deal, right? First time ever studying a shamanic trance state with EEG.
Monumental. And the findings were clear. The EEG showed, and I'm quoting here, a big modification of brain activity, but only during the trance.
Critically, her brain looked completely normal before she started and went right back to normal the second she stopped.
Exactly. This was huge because it validated trance as a genuine cognitive phenomenon, a measurable change in how the brain is working, not just, a cultural belief or some kind of psychological act like some anthropologists might have suggested.
Were there specifics in the EEG data that pointed to what kind of change was happening?
Yes, there's a very clear signal of right hemispheric predominance.
Okay, so more activity in the right side of the brain. What does that usually handle?
Broadly speaking, the right hemisphere is more involved in things like spatial awareness, intuition, nonverbal cues, seeing the big picture, holistic stuff. So, for a state where people report feeling like another or sensing information in non-ordinary ways, seeing that shift to the right brain makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, but here's the practical problem. If the traditional drum only works for, 1 in 100,000 people, that's not exactly a scalable tool.
Right. 0.0001% efficiency. Not great if you want to actually study this or use it more widely. They needed something better.
And this is where Corine's background as a composer comes back in.
Exactly. She went back to the recordings of the traditional drumming, the stuff she knew worked on her. She listened carefully and isolated the specific sequences, the short loops, that felt the most powerful, the most effective at triggering the state in her.
So she found the active ingredients in the music, basically.
You could say that. She gave these potent little loops to the scientists, and they analyzed them, looking at the frequencies, the rhythms, the patterns. They then enhanced these sequences to create a standardized, repeatable tool, the sound loop.
And how well did this work?
The results were, frankly, astonishing. They first tried it with a group of artists, thinking maybe creative types would be more open to it.
Yeah.
16 out of 20, that's 80%, went into a full trance state on their very first time listening to the loop.
Wait, hang on. From 1 in 100,000 to 80% on the first go.
Yeah. It's almost unbelievable, isn't it? It just completely changes the game for accessing this state of consciousness.
Was it just artists, though? Maybe they're naturally more susceptible?
That's what they tested next. They ran the same experiment with a group of, research scientists, people you might expect to be more analytical, maybe more resistant.
And the result?
The exact same 80% success rate on the first listen. And what's more, they found that everyone, regardless of their background, could achieve a full trance state by the time they'd listened to the loop maybe 4 times.
That's incredible. It democratizes access to this state in a way that was never possible before. Now, we have to touch on safety here. How does this compare to, say, taking a psychedelic?
That's a crucial distinction the researchers make. With self-induced trance, the person remains fully conscious throughout. You're an observer of what's happening in your own mind and body.
So you're not gone like you might be on a substance.
Exactly. And because you're conscious and observing, you can choose to go back, to return to your normal state whenever you want. The sources are quite clear. They say there are no side effects in the sense of a bad trip you can't stop or a difficult chemical aftermath. The control stays with you.
Okay, so we have this powerful, accessible, and controllable tool. Let's pivot to the applications. What can this actually do in the real world? The oncology case study sounds extraordinary.
It really is. It involves a top French researcher. We'll call him Francis. He works at the CNRS, which is like the main government research body in France, a serious scientist.
And he had cancer?
Yes, advanced metastasized prostate cancer. It had spread aggressively, even paralyzing his hips. His doctors had basically given him only a few months left. Conventional treatments weren't working anymore.
So, as a last resort, he turned to this self-induced trance research.
He did. He started listening to the sound loop. And during his very first trance session, something remarkable happened. His hips, the ones that were paralyzed, began to move. Quite intensely, apparently.
Just from the trance state.
Seems so. He made self-induction a daily practice after that. Now, it's vital to mention he also made significant changes to his diet around the same time.
Right, so we can't say definitively the trance cured him.
No, the researchers are very careful about that. But fast forward 14 months, and Francis was in total remission, complete remission.
That's amazing, regardless of the exact contribution. But there was more to it, wasn't there? Something about his own research field.
Yes, this is the really mind-bending part. Francis is a specialist in cell metabolism. And he started noticing something uncanny. His body seemed to be waking him up, prompting him to enter a trance state at the exact times of day when, according to his own scientific knowledge, his specific type of cancer cells were known to be most active and spreading.
Whoa, like his body intuitively knew the enemy's schedule and was using the trance to fight back?
That was his interpretation. It suggested some kind of deep unconscious intelligence using the trance state as a potential healing mechanism, aligning itself precisely with the metabolic rhythm of the disease.
That has staggering implications.
Absolutely. And it's led directly to the creation of a foundation, specifically to research this connection, how self-induced trance might influence cell metabolism and potentially impact conditions like cancer.
And connected to this, you mentioned something called the synaptic trace.
Right. Friends has described this as a kind of imprint left in the brain after a trance session, like a new pathway or form of cellular memory. He found he could consciously reconnect to this trace later.
What's the purpose of that?
It seems to allow the body to learn or reinforce beneficial processes discovered during the trance, perhaps healing mechanisms, perhaps new ways of thinking or feeling. It suggests the effects aren't just temporary. The trance can actually help rewire things in a lasting way.
Okay, moving from the body to the mind, what about psychiatry? There's a pilot program starting?
Yes, authorized with a Dr. Limit. They're looking at really tough conditions. Dissociative disorders, severe depression, panic attacks, PTSD.
What's the thinking there? How could trance help with those?
The hypothesis is quite interesting. They think controlled trance might help patients learn to consciously navigate the pathway into and crucially out of their difficult mental states.
So like learning to manage the transitions.
Kind of. By observing the anxiety or the dissociation from the slightly detached perspective of the trance state, the hope is they can gain some mastery over it, maybe reduce how often these episodes happen or how intense they are without being completely overwhelmed.
That makes sense. And beyond therapy, what about just human potential? Learning, skills.
This is where it gets really fascinating. The researchers talk about latent capabilities. The idea is that during trance, some of the brain's usual inhibitory systems, the things that tell us you can't do that, get dialed down temporarily.
Like the classic example of a mother lifting a car off her child. The strength was there, just inhibited.
Exactly like that. Trance might be a way to safely access that state where the impossible becomes possible. It opens up possibilities for testing our limits, maybe learning new skills faster or performing better than we thought we could.
Which brings us to maybe the weirdest part of the research, this mystery language. What on earth is that?
It's something Corine first reported. During trance, she found this automatic pre-language emerging. She understood its meaning perfectly as she spoke it, but it wasn't any known, identifiable human language.
Okay, strange enough, but it gets stranger.
It does. When she started doing one-on-one sessions using the sound loop, sometimes the other person, someone who might speak French or English or German, completely different native tongues, would spontaneously start answering her in that exact same unknown language.
They'd have a conversation in a language neither of them consciously knew.
Apparently so. It suggests access to some incredibly deep, maybe primal or even cellular level of communication that bypasses our normal linguistic structures. Well, it's a mystery they're still exploring.
Okay, this is all incredibly powerful stuff, which makes the next point absolutely critical: safety and integration. This isn't a toy.
Not at all. And the researchers are emphatic about this. Nadine Kreisberger developed a specific psychological protocol that must accompany the use of SIT.
So it's not just about inducing the trance.
No, that's only half the equation. The other half is integrating the experience afterwards. They combine SIT with established methods, classical psychology, working with dreams and symbols to help the person make sense of what came up during the trance.
Why is that integration so essential?
Because when you ask a deep question or set an intention before going into trance, the insights that arise aren't just intellectual ideas. They're described as feeling etched in the cells, incredibly profound and embodied answers, often related to the root causes of deep anxieties or phobias.
And the danger of not integrating.
This is the stark warning. Using trance induction without a proper integration framework is potentially dangerous.
Oh, so?
Because trance can lower those inhibitors we talked about, it might suddenly bring up deeply buried pain, trauma, or difficult memories that the conscious mind has kept hidden for very good reasons. If there isn't a trained professional and a supportive structure like the programs they're developing to help process that sudden influx, it could be destabilizing, even re-traumatizing.
So powerful tool, but handle with extreme care and expertise.
Absolutely. Responsibility is paramount.
To place this in context, did they compare SIT to other altered states, like hypnosis?
They did. Using MRI scans, they found that self-induced trance activates distinctly different areas of the brain compared to hypnotic trance. So they're not the same thing neurologically.
Interesting. What about meditation?
This was perhaps even more surprising. EEG recordings taken during the resting state between trance sessions showed brain activity patterns remarkably similar to those seen in highly experienced Buddhist monks and long-term meditators, people with decades of practice.
Wow. So regular use of SIT might actually foster a baseline brain state similar to very advanced meditation, without needing decades of silent retreat.
The preliminary data points that way.
Mm.
It suggests a lasting beneficial shift in brain function might be possible.
It underlines why the scientific rigor was so important for them, doesn't it? Given the shamanism label.
Precisely. They knew they had to be incredibly rigorous, methodologically sound, to avoid being dismissed as, voodoo or pseudoscience. They stress this is a tool for controlled research and clinical application by trained professionals, doctors, psychiatrists who understand the protocols and the importance of safety.
So we've journeyed from an accidental, terrifying transformation in Mongolia through rigorous EEG proof, the creation of this incredibly efficient sound loop technology, and now into these potentially groundbreaking applications in cancer research, psychiatry, and understanding human potential. It really does feel like mapping a new continent within our own minds.
It does. And perhaps the biggest takeaway isn't just the trance state itself or even the sound loop. It's the potential it unlocks, the capabilities it suggests we all have lying dormant within us.
The ability to heal, maybe, to access deeper wisdom, to push past perceived limits.
Exactly. If this research shows we have these extraordinary uninhibited capacities, physical, mental, maybe even communicative, just waiting. And if self-induced trance is one safe key to begin unlocking them.
Then what else are we capable of?
That's the question to ponder, isn't it? If you could safely remove some of those internal "you can't do that" signals, what undiscovered potential might your own body and mind be ready to learn or achieve? What latent capability is waiting inside you?